Mystery Hangouts! Mystery Hangouts! I love Mystery Hangouts. Hi guys, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. Today we are talking about Mystery Hangouts. I love doing Mystery Hangouts in my classroom. Sometimes they're also called Mystery Skype, whichever system you like to use. We do everything with like Google at my school, so we do Mystery Hangouts. I was introduced to this idea at the beginning of last year by Darren Nakakihara. So shout out to Darren for getting me hooked on Mystery Hangouts, and today I'm going to tell you all about how we do them. I've got a bunch of footage at the end for you of my students actually doing Mystery Hangouts. We did about 5 this year, and I got footage from most of them, so I've got like a big old montage for you in a minute. And I'm just going to walk you through what they are, why I love them, why they're so great in your classroom, and I have a resource on Teachers Pay Teachers that can just make this really, really easy and streamlined for you. Now that I've done this a few times, I just like sat down to make it a little bit more streamlined for myself, and I started making some resources for myself, and then I just went ahead and put those on Teachers Pay Teachers. So if you are interested in doing Mystery Hangouts, you can get that from Teachers Pay Teachers and then watch this video, and it should make complete sense once you've got everything all together. Okay, so what are Mystery Hangouts? A Mystery Hangout is a video chat between your classroom and another classroom, and typically you're trying to figure out where that other class is located. So this is amazing for like social studies or geography classes, because kids really have to use their map skills and their geography skills in order to figure out where the other class is. But I think this is relevant even in other classes, because they also have to use their communication skills. They have to work as a team, they have to cooperate, they have different jobs that need to be done. So it's just a really fun activity to do with your kids. Every single time we did it, my students loved it. And with this like growing network of the teacher online community, it's really easy to find another teacher to do a Mystery Hangout with and actually have your students like meet each other. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of use my resource as like an outline to go through this so that if you are looking at that, it matches up with the video. A couple of logistical things. So your students and the other class are only going to ask yes or no questions, and the first class to figure out where the other class is the winner. You could also do some variations on this challenge. Trying to think of all the Mystery Hangouts that we did this year. So one of my 6th grade classes did a hangout with Darren's 4th grade class. So this is definitely something that like upper elementary classes can do. And it doesn't have to be the same grade level. We had, 6th graders and 4th graders, and we were trying to figure out what city our classes were in, but we did know that they were in California. So we gave each class the same California map so that they could kind of reference the same things, and they had to figure out which city each class was in. So that one was really fun. I also did one with Paige from Pages, and her class was actually in Kansas, and she had a self-contained class, and I have, different periods, obviously. So like one of my classes did a Mystery Hangout with her, and we were just trying to figure out the state that each of us were in. And California is kind of an easy state to guess, because once they asked, I think like, do you border the Pacific Ocean? And we said yes, then it was like, okay, well, they're gonna figure out in a few more guesses. But we did that with one period, and then like my next class came in, and she was like, my kids still like really wanna keep playing. And so then with my next group, we already knew that like they were in Kansas and we were in California, and so then we just tried to figure out the city within the state. So that was really cool that we just like extended it. Like she texted me and she's like, they really want to keep going, they're having so much fun. So we just like threw it together with my next class. I did another Mystery Hangout with a teacher from my old school, which was actually like really nearby. So we kind of made it seem like these two cities were like really far away from each other, but then the kids figured out that they were like neighbors. And I think that was another 6th grade class with my 6th grade class, so that was really fun. With my 8th graders, we did a Mystery Hangout with Christina from Teach Like a Girl. I can't even remember like why we did this, But she already kind of knew like where I was, and she didn't have a class at this time, so we just did one just with her. And so I thought it would be kind of cool for my 8th grade English students to start thinking about colleges. And so she was at her college while we were doing the hangout, and so I had them ask her questions to try to figure out what college she goes to or what university she's getting her PhD at, and then she was trying to figure out our school mascot. So that one was a little more complex, but that was really fun. And then they finally figured out her university, and then they got to ask her some questions about her PhD program and stuff. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can do it, and Instagram is usually where I find like other teachers to do these hangouts with. So here's the basic setup that I include in the resource. So just find another friend in another city, or not in another city if you want to do some different kind of a question, you know. And again, it can be with another class or just like with another person if you want to do something more like what I did with Christina. You can like have somebody do a hangout with you and have your kids try to figure out what job they have. So your topics are pretty endless. They just have to be able to be figured out with yes or no questions. So your first step is just find somebody to do a mystery hangout with, or a class to do a mystery hangout with, and figure out what you want the question to be. Then you have to schedule a time that works for both of you. So when I was scheduling them, since I have different classes of students, it was usually kind of difficult to coordinate times, and I would just focus on one class per hangout. So I think like my 2nd period class was the first class that got to do it, and then all my other classes were asking like, we want to do a mystery hangout. So a couple weeks later I would set one up for like my 4th period class, and then my 5th period class got to do it. Like I had to kind of stagger them out. It was easier for me to coordinate with elementary school teachers because I only have my students for a certain amount of time, and we're on a rotating schedule. So it was like practically impossible. And then you have to factor in like lunchtime, like when you start school and end school. And if you're in a different time zone, then you definitely have to work that out as well. So scheduling is maybe the most difficult part, but if you're both elementary school teachers and you're both in the same time zone, then that might not be too bad, but it takes a little bit of effort otherwise. And I would say that you need to allot about 45 minutes for this activity. It's kind of hard to predict because you just, there's so much up in the air, but I would say about 45 minutes. The day before you have your mystery hangout, you want to assign roles to all of your students and make sure that they understand just like the basic idea of what they're doing the next day. And I'll go through all of those roles in a minute, and I provide in the resource like really easy ways to just fill all that in. Also, before the day of your mystery hangout, you want to do a test run with the other teacher, because for example, if you're using Google Hangouts, your district might block email addresses that are from outside of the district. That happened to me when we were doing one with Tierney. She's another one of my YouTube friends, and her district actually blocked my email address, and so it ended up not working. And then we did have to switch over to Skype, but then I had to make an account. So you've got to do like all of those things beforehand. Another thing that I would do in preparation is email your administrators or your principal and just let them know what you're doing in your classroom and have them come in and check it out, because your kids are going to be so engaged and so into this activity that it's just kind of fun to have people step in and be like, whoa, what is happening in this classroom? If you're nervous about that, maybe run like one first and then invite them to your second time or something, but it ends up being really, really cool, and it's something that you want other people to see. Okay, so the necessary like supplies or resources that you're going to need are, first of all, a laptop with a built-in camera. And actually my teacher laptop was so old at the beginning of the school year that I couldn't even do that. So I had to like switch it over to my Chromebook or whatever. So you just have to look at your technology, and it's easier to have a laptop, like something that can kind of move around the room and that has a camera. I suppose you could add like, you know, one of those cameras that you just like plug in, but that sounds annoying. And then of course you're gonna need some kind of like projection screen for your students to see the school on the other side of the camera. Like you wanna have that nice and big. you wouldn't want that just to be like on the little laptop screen. Like you would want everybody in your classroom to be able to see all of them. So I'm sure most teachers have some way to project what's on the laptop up on the screen. Okay, you do need speakers, but most of the time you're going to have the speakers off because you don't want the other team to hear you like talking about the questions that you're coming up with. So you're gonna have signs that will indicate to the other team when you're ready, and they'll turn their speakers on so they can hear you ask a question. But for the majority of the time, you're gonna have the speakers off. Also because it's just like annoying, like it would just be loud to have all the classroom noise like crossing over into the other noisy loud classroom, and then plus you've got like, you know, yourself coming out of your speaker and there's a little bit of feedback. Make sure you print out the signs so that you can indicate to the other team when you're ready, and speakers just so that you can ask your questions, but most of the time the speakers will be off. It's also really helpful to have badges for students, and I include those in the resource, but you could hang them from their necks or whatever, because there are a bunch of different roles that students need to fill, and it's helpful to know who's doing what, and like they're color coded and everything so you can see who is in charge of which issue. It's also very helpful to have a big whiteboard in front of your room. I have one like right next to the projector screen, so that was perfect. When your team asks questions, you're gonna have somebody writing those questions on the board, and then when the other team answers, they will record those answers on the board just so that everybody remembers what they said as they're trying to figure out new questions. You also wanna have some 3x5 cards or post-it notes or something for the question generators, who are going to be writing down questions and then giving it to the facilitators that are asking questions of the other team's facilitators. The other thing that you're going to need if you're doing the geography challenge is a map, either of like the United States if you're trying to figure out what state they're in, or of a particular state if you're trying to figure out the city within a state. It will just depend on what geography challenge you are doing, but it's helpful if you decide on this with the other teacher and maybe print out the same map so that your students on both sides are like referring to the same thing. They can ask questions about, you know, particular points on the map. You can definitely use like Google Maps if you want to. I just found that, especially maybe for younger students, it was really helpful to have a physical map and then like a marker or a crayon of some kind to mark off the areas that we knew they were not in. So you can do this in a paperless way, but I just feel like it's really helpful to actually have a physical map. Plus our kids tend to not be great with their physical map skills, so this is a really good way to practice, and it makes it a little bit easier. So I would personally suggest having a physical map that they can draw on and mess up. Okay, the next thing to figure out are student jobs, and I have 8 different jobs in my classroom. We just kind of like came up with these as we did Google Hangouts and figured out what we needed. I have 8 that we do. One of them is a question generator, and you just need like 1 or 2 people to do this job. They are going to write down the yes or no questions that they'll give to the facilitators to ask of the other class. The question generators are going to get their ideas for questions from the investigation team. So they're not doing this all on their own, but it does need to be students that can write like a coherent, easy to understand question. Then we have liaisons. You want to have a couple of liaisons who are bringing the questions from the question generators to the facilitators, and are also bringing question ideas from your investigation team to the question generators. Another job is the recorder, and you probably just need 1 recorder. Maybe they could have like an assistant that helps them just listen for the questions and write them down. So they are going to be writing down all the questions that you guys ask on a whiteboard or a space where people can see it, and then also keeping track of what the other team answered. So this person should have pretty good handwriting and just be able to keep up with the questions being asked and answered. Another job is kind of a team job. These are the location experts, and they need to know the location where you are. Do you want to be a location expert? Jensen is joining us for a minute. So the location experts will know exactly where your city is or where your state is. So if the other team asks, like, does your state border the Pacific Ocean? Everyone looks to the location experts and they say yes or no. And remember that all of the questions are going to be yes or no questions. So I think in my class this was like 7 or 8 students that were the location experts. So your next team is the investigation team, and they are trying to figure out where the other class is. So they are listening to the questions being asked and answered, and they're kind of marking that off on their maps. And then they're continuing to look at their maps and figure out what question they should ask next. So if they have an idea for a new question, like, okay, does your state border Canada? Then they are going to tell that question to one of the liaisons. The liaison will take that to the question generator, who will write it down and bring it to the facilitators. So everyone is very interdependent, as you can see. And the facilitators are probably 2 students that are going to sit in front of the computer and ask the questions and also answer the questions by holding up signs that say yes or no. They also have signs that say, like, we're ready if they are ready to ask a question, or still thinking if they're still trying to get an answer from the location experts about the other class's question. So these students need to be pretty comfortable in front of the camera, in front of the computer, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to support them, but then they are like ultimately asking and answering the questions. I also suggest providing chairs for these poor students. The first time that we did one, like, I just set up a table with the printed out pieces of paper that said like yes or no or whatever, and then we had the Chromebook, but I forgot to put chairs there, so they were like sitting on their knees and we were always just like ducking down to like say something to the computer. So set up a little station for them. It needs to have like a table where their little posters are, and then some, you know, some chairs for them. One thing we try to remember on that day also is like not to wear anything that says the name of your city or the name of your school or the name of your state, like anything that would give the other side a little advantage. And right at the very beginning of your mystery hangout, you can have ambassadors, usually 2 people, do a little introduction of your class and kind of get the mystery hangout started. So these people have a little bit of work to do ahead of time. They'll write a little introduction just so that it's easier, and they'll introduce your class without saying where they are. So they will start off the mystery hangout and say, welcome to our classroom. This is Mrs. Forbes' English class. We are so happy to have you here. Our names are this and that. And if you are maybe like the more experienced teacher that has done this before, then you can have your students explain the rules and just show them like the yes or no and whatever. So they're like a useful little team to have right at the beginning. And then at the end, they can kind of like close things down as well and say like, thank you for being guests in our classrooms. We really enjoyed doing this mystery hangout with you. So you want to have 2 really friendly students as your ambassadors. No. Yes, you do. Yes. The last team is a social media team. So it's always nice to get little like pictures or video clips that you can put on Instagram or Twitter, or show to, you know, your principal or your team at your school, just because these end up being really fun. But as the teacher, you're a little bit like, okay, trying to make sure everyone understands and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's nice to assign that job to a couple of students, and I guarantee that you will have many students in your class that are more than willing to be the social media team. I just gave them my phone and my like little video camera and had them just get, you know, whatever footage or pictures that they wanted to. I think I took the camera a couple of times myself as well, but that's how I got the footage that I'll be showing you in just a second. So those are all of the roles that you will need filled. So it's probably going to take a little while, you know, the day before or a couple days before you do your mystery hangout to figure out who's gonna do what. There might be some competition for roles. You just have to figure out, you know, the best way for your class to figure out who gets to do which thing. And then I provide badges within the TPT resource so that you can print out badges for everybody, and they can either put them on their desks or wear them around their necks or pin them to their shirts or whatever you want to do. As you're deciding who's going to do which role, I also provided just like lists where you can write down everybody's name just to make sure that you've got enough people on each team. And after that, you're ready to get started. It gets like really crazy really quickly, and your students are so engaged and they're having so much fun. Everybody has a role, everybody knows what they're doing, and it's just like so interesting for them to peek into another classroom and see students from somewhere else. And if you're doing the geography version, then it really helps them to get a better like spatial sense of where they are. So again, this is so great for their geography skills, for their map skills, for their communication skills, for their technology skills. It builds an amazing sense of cooperation and teamwork within your classroom. If you can do this toward the beginning of the year, that's a great thing to do because they just have this fun experience that they all shared. I mean, next year I'm even planning on like collaborating with another teacher, my friend Emily from Read It, Write It, Learn It, and we're gonna be doing some of the same lessons together. So we're thinking of having like literature circles or like book talks or something through Google Hangouts. So the possibilities are just endless, and it's great if you have just this little outline that you can use to just structure everything and then continue using that same resource over and over. So I hope that this all makes sense. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll leave a link in the description bar to go to Teachers Pay Teachers and get this resource so that you can look through it and watch this video and make sure everything makes sense in your mind. And now for the most exciting part, I'm going to show you what this actually looked like in my classroom throughout the year with my students participating in Mystery Hangouts. So without further ado, here are my students.
How do you make this bigger?
Hi, I'm Dylan. Are you really happy? I'm E-geographer.
Okay, so for the e-geographer, you're looking up what other questions? Look up 3 things you could ask them. They're ready for a question. Okay, you ready? Are we east of the 5 freeway?
Which one is it? Yes or no?
Yes! They can't hear you!
Are they floated?
Do you have like an okay?
Are we north? Okay, are you asking?
Are you north of the 405 freeway?
Are you west of the 55 freeway? We are ready! I'm so tempted to just make a question.
No! We are gonna go for the yes.
Yeah,
Okay, we're ready to make a guess.
Congratulations! Are you north of Kansas? Okay, they're ready, they're ready. Do you live in California?
Yes! Okay. Do you guys want to make a guess back?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to just make a last guess?
Good guess.
Where do you think they are? Okay, no, not north of Atchison. So what can you do here then? So what are you gonna add? They're not north of Atchison. Really? Cool. Is that what we think? Okay.
Does your city start with a J? No.
On. Okay, so do you know what you think it is then? Okay. So do you want to make a guess next? West of Los Angeles. Okay. Are we ready? Okay, guys, we're guessing.
Does your city end with city?
Miles of Los Angeles.
Within 15 miles of Los Angeles.
Do you guys live in Kansas City?
We're doing a Google Hangout right now. I have one person assigned to writing down all the questions we ask of the other class, so we can keep track of that. We're kind of narrowing in on them right now. I have the other class projected up on the screen using my laptop over here. This is the one that's projected up, but I have it on mute because otherwise we get feedback. And then I have my two on-air talent ready to answer. Oh yeah. It looks like there's a ghost or something. So we are communicating through here. It's nice to keep it on mute so that they can't hear like our thought process. Then I have this side of the class looking at where we are. So when the other class asks questions about us, this group is in charge of answering those questions. And then over on this side, this group is in charge of studying the maps and trying to figure out where they might be, and they're trying to kind of narrow in and come up with new questions. So this side of the room asks questions, and then here's our question generator. He brings the questions.
We are still thinking.
Okay, yeah, we have these signs that say we are still thinking. They say yes, no, and we are ready. So there's a lot of downtime, but that's why you just mute your computer and you've got different groups of people working on it over here. Okay, so we're gonna hold up our yes sign. Okay, so this says we are ready. And then we're telling them so that clearly gave them some clues. They're pretty excited to hear that. It helps with your classes if they kind of have a question like ready to go after the other class answers. So right now we have kind of a lot of downtime because we're waiting for their question. So you just want to make sure that you've always got one coming. So you've got specific kids working on generating questions. And they can only be yes or no questions. Oh.
ready. They're ready.
Oh, good. They are ready. Okay. All right, guys, you need to be quiet so we can hear their question. Shh.